morning. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to Connection, coming to you from Spirit and Truth Sanctuary. I am so happy to be back live with you today. We are going to begin with our morning blessing. Spirit of Truth, we give thanks today for our connection in this time of togetherness, for our sameness as well as our contrasts, and for the light we reflect to one another and see in one another. We give thanks for the holy that holds us and for the humanity that always brings us back to the holy. We ask that our happiness, our peace, and our joy now be woven into the fabric of the world around us, and that it serve as nourishment to feed the heart of the collective. In the name and nature of the Christ, amen, and so it is. All right, on to our quotes. The first is a set of affirmations for the holiday season, courtesy of an Instagram account I follow called One Word Wellness. The first one: I will give myself grace through the ups and downs. 2, I will find moments of beauty in the mess. 3, it's okay if events don't live up to my expectations. Number 4, I will be present in the everyday moments. Number 5, I will respect myself by staying within my financial means, so you do not have a big headache come January. 6, I will not compare my reality with someone else's images, which may or may not actually be their reality. So that means don't flip through don't scroll through your Facebook feed thinking that your Christmas was so much worse than everybody else's, when what they are posting may or may not represent what their reality is. And number 7, I can choose how I want to celebrate. Now, on Sunday, Pastor Lonnie talked about that he was the party pastor, and he loves to go to big parties with dancing and laughing and I'm assuming loudness, and that's great. And if you want to do that, do that. But I think the point of this is you can choose how you want to celebrate. If that's not your thing, if being in a crowd, in a big crowd, makes you anxious, then feel free to celebrate the way you want to celebrate, more quietly with just a few people. Don't feel pressured to celebrate the way everybody else celebrates. And finally, number 8, this is always good to remember, even not in the holiday season: my best is enough. All right, so next is just a little reminder of the things you can control and the things that you can't. First, the things that are out of your control: the past, the future, the actions of others, what happens around you, what others think of you, the outcome of your efforts. Okay, I want to expand on that a little bit. What you can control is the level of your effort. But then once you put in your best, the outcome is out of your control. So it's best just to surrender that and not place too many expectations on an exact outcome. Next, something that's out of your control: how others take care of themselves and the choices they make. This one is so important. Sometimes, I say a lot of times, you can't want better for people than they want for themselves. I mean, you can, but you can't do anything about the fact that and who's to say that what you feel is better is better? So, how others take care of themselves, your family members, your friends, and the choices they make are out of your control. So don't stress about that. Now, the things that you can control: your boundaries, your thoughts and actions, the goals you set for yourself, what you give your energy and attention to, how you speak to yourself, and how you handle challenges. All right, we're going to talk about many of these things today. Next, the next quote: all great spirituality is about what we do with our pain. If we do not transform it, we will transmit it to those around us. Richard Rohr. So that's a great way to look at the purpose of any spiritual practice. It's mainly to help us tend to our own inner terrain, which is my title today and what we'll be talking about, because unfortunately, pain is just a part of the human journey. None of us escapes it entirely, but as I've said before, although pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. And as this quote said, if we do not have a mechanism in place to transmute or transform our pain, it will turn into suffering and then spill over onto everyone around us. And that's what we want to avoid as much as we possibly can. So for our last quote, and to lay the foundation for the teaching today, I'm going to read something from our very good friend and brother, Reverend John Scott. If you are on Instagram and you're not following him, you are missing out. He has a little segment that he calls Let's Walk and Talk that he does pretty regularly, and he drops some wonderful practical advice for life in them. And here is one of his recent ones, and I'm going to paraphrase because the way Instagram works is it's not like YouTube where you can pause something and listen to it and write one sentence down and then start it again. It just goes and you can't pause it. So if it's long, you have to listen to it over and over and over from the beginning. So I'm going to paraphrase what he said. He says, as you move through life, there's going to be friction because anything in motion is going to experience friction. And in order to be fully alive, you're going to experience emotions. So remember that when you move through life, okay, life is not static. Life is a flow. So anything that's moving is going to cause friction. Even you may not even realize it, but when you walk, your body is creating friction in the air around you. So anything in motion is always going to come up against a little friction. And sometimes friction can be painful. So celebrate the fact that you have the ability to feel. Feeling any emotion, even pain, just means you're still alive and engaged in the process. So when you feel painful emotions, remind yourself that all feelings are temporary. All thoughts are temporary. You are the permanent one. You, not your feelings, thoughts, or emotions. You are the one observing these things. So learn to shift your focus and celebrate the permanent you and know that everything else just comes to pass. All right. So first of all, let me take this opportunity to thank everyone for bearing with me last week when we ran a repeat teaching. I was home recovering from COVID. I successfully avoided it for 2 years, but it finally caught me. And I want to thank all of you for your love and support and prayers. I'm feeling so much better now. And also, thanks to those of you who reached out to me in any way with your well wishes. I truly appreciate it. So 2 weeks ago, we talked about demagnetizing ourselves. And in that teaching, I made the point that you can let go or detach yourself from external things, such as a person or a job or a situation, that when you feel triggered by it, but unless you deal with whatever it is inside you that was the magnet for that triggered feeling, then you're just going to keep attracting the same type of people and jobs and circumstances because that's where the feeling is occurring. It's inside you. And so that's where we're going to begin today and expand a little more on that topic. I read you a quote in that teaching by a man named Bruce Lipton, and the quote was, "The germ is nothing. The terrain is everything," which means the terrain of our body, how strong our immune system is, and the relative level of our general health is what determines how we will respond to and handle any germ that enters it. So it's not the strength of the pathogen, the thing that's outside, but the strength of our body that matters most, which explains why two people can have the exact same illness and respond very differently to it. Now, obviously, he's speaking here about our physical bodies, but the same principle applies to our emotional well-being. There's another quote that most of you are familiar with that says, "It's not what happens to you, it's what you do with what happens to you," which begins with how you feel about what happens to you. Same principle. It's not the external things that trigger us, like we talked about 2 weeks ago, but our internal magnets that attract these things to us. Some of you might also remember a concept I've talked about before that comes from yoga that's called the second arrow. The first arrow, okay, being the event or the statement that's said to you that creates a wound. When an arrow comes towards you and hits you, that's that first arrow that creates the wound. But then how we feel about it is the second arrow that just opens that wound a little deeper. That second arrow comes from us. There are always going to be things that people say or do to us that sting a little. But if we hear it and we know it's not the truth and we don't accept it as the truth about us, it just rolls right off our back, and we realize that most of the time it has nothing at all to do with us anyway. It's just a projection from whoever the person is who said it or did it. But if we allow it in, if we begin to believe it, then we wound ourselves all over again. And then this concept goes a little further, saying that if we keep doing this long enough, our wounds will actually start to seek out the arrows in order to validate their existence. Now, that is so deep, but it's so true. If we let a wound fester long enough, it becomes an entity all on its own. And then it begins to need a reason to exist. It needs validation from us in order to survive. So it will actually seek out arrows that are a vibrational match to it so that we can say to ourselves, see, it is true. Everybody always is out to get me. Okay? You see what I'm saying? It's like, those people that that are just before you even say anything, they're always going to be offended they're just looking for ways to be offended. That's what this principle is talking about. They have let their wounds stay open for so long and unhealed that they have that wound inside them has become a vibrational match to offenses, to these other arrows that come at them. And instead of healing themselves and just letting things bounce off or fly right by them, those magnets, those wounds inside them have become magnets that just draw that arrow and more hurt and pain and suffering to them. All right, so when we clean up the magnets, like we talked about 2 weeks ago, when we heal the wound, we are no longer a vibrational match for the arrows. And if there's nothing inside us to attract it, like I said, it just either flies by us or bounces off of us. A while back, I read a piece to you from Amanda Ellis, and she was talking about how strong the electromagnetic field around our heart space is, and that it actually forms a shield or a barrier, as it were, so that when negative things come toward us, they are transformed when they meet that field. It's like a cushion almost that disperses negative energy so that the impact of it is barely noticeable by the time that it actually reaches our heart. And the more love we are emitting outward from our heart, the bigger and the more expansive that barrier, that cushion, that field gets. So that when negative stuff comes our way, it meets it way out here instead of getting all the way right here. And that's why we're talking about what we're talking about today. And it's why it's so important. Tending to your own inner terrain rather than focusing on changing or even letting go of external things. If your inner terrain is strong and healthy, then external things cannot damage it. So, how are some ways we can do this? I came across a little list of a few suggestions this week that I want to share with you now. Remember, one of our quotes today was, all great spirituality is about what we do with our pain. If we do not transform it, we will transmit it to those around us. And I'll add another layer to that we also talked about. If we don't transform it, it becomes a wound that is constantly seeking arrows in order to validate its existence. And that's when pain turns into suffering. So the way we transform pain is by tending our own inner terrain. And here are some practical ways we can do that. Number one, think critically. Let's talk about what that means for a minute. Critical thinking is all about asking questions, the right questions, questions that help you assess both the meaning and the significance of claims and arguments. Critical thinking involves stepping back from a situation, enabling you to see all the angles. Now, time out. Sometimes this involves enlisting the help of others. My brother often gives the example of if you're standing there looking at a ball, at a sphere, you can only see it from your perspective, from where you're standing. If you want to know what the other side of it looks like, you've got to ask someone who's standing on the other side to describe to you what it looks like from their perspective. None of us can have the whole truth by ourselves. So don't get so stuck in your perspective that you stop listening to others. All right. Critical thinking does not mean being critical. It is not all about finding flaws in others' points of view. To be a true critical thinker means to be creative, reflective, and adaptable. What does that sound like? I am not my beliefs. I am the spirit capable of having beliefs, but my beliefs can and should evolve over time as I come across more or different truths. An important point to remember here is that religion tells you what to think. It just hands you a belief already made and says, here, this is what you should believe. Spirituality teaches you how to think, which involves what we're talking about here, critical thinking. That's basically what critical thinking is, not just accepting something because someone told you to, but asking the questions and then being willing to adapt and change your beliefs as a result of the answers you find. Another important component of critical thinking is knowing when you don't have enough information to make a decision. Sometimes you don't, and it's perfectly okay to say, I don't know right now. I don't know. I need some more information. I'll get back to you. That's fine. Okay, number 2. The second practical way you can tend your inner terrain is to avoid watching the news. This is something I did a long time ago. If you don't want to avoid it altogether, at least limit it. Most of the news out there right now is bad. That's no surprise. And a constant diet of it is as bad for your brain and for your heart as a constant diet of junk food is for your body. That's just common sense. Let's go back to another of our quotes from earlier about the things you can and can't control. If you can't possibly do anything about something, then what is the value of knowing about it? Most of the information we get from the news adds absolutely no value to our lives because it's just talking about things that we have no control over. So that information just sits in our hearts and makes us sad or anxious or nervous or mad. And there's nothing we can do about it. So it serves no purpose and it adds no value. So why do we keep watching it? Good question to spend some time thinking about. Number 3, observe yourself. That's just another way to say be self-aware. Know yourself. Know who you are, what you are, and what you are not. Okay, going back to another quote, the quote from John Scott. Understand that you, the permanent you, are not your feelings, your thoughts, or your emotions. And as we also pointed out, you are not your beliefs. Now, this morning I was thinking about something. Sometimes I'll wake up in the morning with a song in my head. And if it's a song that I've got on one of my many, many playlists, I'll turn it on. So I woke up this morning thinking about an old Andre Crouch song, so I turned it on. And then, as the way playlists work, it just keeps playing, other music that's in the same playlist. So occasionally I will listen to what I call that old school Christian contemporary music that I grew up with, that all through my teenage years in Alpha we listened to. And there's nothing wrong with that. Now, a lot of the theology and the belief systems that surrounded those lyrics, I don't believe anymore. But that's okay. It's the same concept as, I was looking through Facebook or Instagram the other day, and Carla Peck, if you are watching, I was interested. The thought hit me. Your daughter, Gabby, who I have known since she was about 3 years old. I used to teach her in Sunday school. She is graduating this upcoming year, 2023, from Southwest DeKalb High School, which is the high school that I graduated from in 1983. So we are exactly 40 years apart, graduating from the same high school. And I thought how wonderful that is. But listen, If I still believed the way I did when I was 18, I wouldn't have come very far in life. I love Gabby with all my heart, but I don't hang out with Gabby on Friday nights because Gabby's 18 and I'm 57. So it's okay to look back to observe yourself and look back at these things, but don't stay there. Also, don't curse those things. Don't say, I'm never listening to that song again because I don't believe that way anymore. No, it's okay that you believe that way one time. It was a stepping stone. Every step and stage you have come through in your life has brought you to where you are. And it's all right to listen to those songs, to remember those times fondly, but don't get stuck there. Have the maturity to observe yourself and see how far you've come. All right. So always maintain the ability to step outside yourself and be the observer. That will help you protect your inner terrain. Number 4, follow your intuition. Okay, we've talked about this many times before. Your heart, your gut, that deep inner knowing is ultimately much more reliable than your mind. Recently, we talked about the fact that even on the physical level, our actual heart has these little things called neurites surrounding it, about 40,000 of them, that prove the heart actually has the ability to think and to retain memory. These abilities are not exclusive to our brain, so it's always a good idea to follow your heart. Number 5, stay away from low-frequency foods. Now, this one, in my opinion, is very subjective because everybody's body is different and everybody responds differently to different foods and can tolerate different types of food in different levels. So this goes back to knowing yourself, to being self-aware. You know what things make your body feel good and what things make you feel sluggish or unable to stay alert. It's not rocket science. Eat foods that make you feel good and allow you to function at your highest level. But understand that that's going to vary from person to person. Don't get stuck in somebody else's diet just because it works for them. It may or may not work for you. You've got to decide that for yourself. All right, number 6, speak your truth. This is another way we keep our inner terrain strong and healthy. Don't bottle things up inside. However, there's a caveat to this. Speaking your truth is not the same thing as just spewing out anything you want with no regard for how it will affect someone else. What does the Bible tell us to do? Speak the truth in love. There is a loving way to say even difficult things. So take some time and put some thought into how you say it, but don't keep it inside. Say what you need to say. Number 7, go inward. So many of these are similar and feed off of each other. This is basically the same thing as observing yourself. It's important that you look inside first. As we've been talking about, what's going on inside you is much more important than what's going on outside of you, and it's the only thing you can truly control. So if you clean up the inside, what's on the outside will change automatically. And that leads us nicely to number 8, meditate. That's what meditation is, going inside and finding the stillness, taking a little time every day to remove yourself from all the noise, both the outer noise and your own inner self-talk, and just listen. All right, number 9, connect with nature. There's so much we can learn just by observing nature and being out in it. One of the biggest things we need to do is to shift our paradigm about nature as something that we must conquer to something we must cooperate with. Man has spent many centuries trying to dominate nature instead of living in harmony with it. Shifting how we think about nature and spending time connecting with it is very healing, both for our physical bodies and for our emotions. All right, lastly, number 10, learn something every day. When you stop learning, you start dying. No matter how old you get, no matter how long you live, you will never learn it all. So continuing to be curious about life and exposing yourself to new things helps you keep your inner terrain young and energetic. So to wrap it all up, I'm going to read a short piece by a woman named Marcy Locke because I think she nicely summarizes what we've been talking about. Tending your inner terrain is actually recognizing your own divinity. That's what your inner terrain is at its core, divine. And taking care of that, giving it most of your attention and focus, is the most important thing you can do to keep yourself healthy inside and out. So Marcy says, I am my greatest asset and investment because I am the only one who can create everything I experience. Have you told yourself this today? Read this out loud and feel it. And she put the word feel in all caps. I am the source of my experience, my own love, safety, prosperity, joy, pleasure, happiness, peace, acceptance, and liberation. I am at home within myself, which means I am at home wherever I am in the world and in whatever situation I am experiencing. Living in bliss and joy is my foundation and home base. I am worthy of it all. The greatest thing I can ever hope for and attain is self-realization. That and that alone will give me more fulfillment, satisfaction, infinite peace and bliss than any material desire. Self-realization is the remembrance of my divinity. We are all here to become integrated, embodied souls operating from our wholeness, our knowing, our flow, and our gratitude for this divine opportunity to live our lives on this incredible planet. Amen? Amen. The way we do this is by lovingly, thoughtfully, and intentionally tending our inner terrain, which consists of our own divinity. So that's all I have for you today. Please join us tomorrow night at 6:30 when we will continue our series, A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. And then again, we will see you either virtually or in person on Sunday. And please don't forget that the first Tuesday in January, January 3rd, we will be open again in the fellowship hall for you to come and join us on Tuesday mornings in person if you would like to. And I'm so excited about that. I'm looking forward to seeing you. Until then, I love you, be at peace, and have a great week.